Hello, welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, in another edition of What Did Sean Drag Home Now? And why? Well, I have never had, well, I can't say that anymore. I now have some decent small block Chevrolets, but when I say I've never had a good one, my first car had a 396 in it, 402 technically. Second car, I initially put a stockish 350 in it because it's all I could get my hands on and had money for, but as soon as I could, I put a 70 454 oval port motor out of a Monte Carlo, but hey, 70 Monte Carlo, 70 Chevelle. It's what I could get my hands on, and I was never disappointed. And from that moment on, pretty much everything I owned, I put a big block in it, or it had a big block in it. Transitioning, the last 10 or so years, I definitely embraced the LS, but throughout all this time, I never had a really rowdy small block. Now, we are building a 377 and a 421 stock engine block motors, and they're both half done, both waiting for the cylinder heads. Another unfinished project that, we're going to get back to sooner than later, because it's at that point where I think they'd be safer if they were complete. The 383 Chevy Performance engine that was in the 71 Nova. I drove it last week. It runs really strong. That's a nice motor. The Blueprint 383 that's in the Street 55 is a nice motor. All streetable stuff. Actually, the 421 that I'm building is kind of, definitely rowdy for sure. So, and going to a few swap meets, I ended up buying some stuff from my buddy Ken to build a couple more small blocks. So I totally went all in on the nostalgia craze. For a while, all I had been collecting was LSs. Now, it sounds like I have a problem, but I just am attracted to dragging home junk with good potential. At some points, depending on the number of unfinished vehicles and engines, sometimes it's not necessarily on the same scale, ratio, if you will. But I'm just babbling. Friday, I'm over at a friend's house. He tells me that a mutual friend has what he thought was an SP2 small block. I went home and studied it. Everything about the SP2 that you can find. It's kind of a mysterious NASCAR engine they ran for 10 years or so. And it's a quirky beast. Not a lot interchanges with a regular small block. But when you get to one like we're going to be talking about here, when I stop running on at the mouth, this doesn't share a whole lot with it either. So what is this? This is a 428 cubic inch small block Chevy with 15-degree Rodex heads. Now, 427 sounds a lot cooler. If you do the math, 4 1/8 bore by 4-inch stroke, it's 427.65. The folder that came with it says 428. The paperwork says 428. And the JE Pistons, when you research the part number, also call it a 428. So 428 to me sounds like a Super Duty Pontiac, but doesn't really matter what we call it, but I'm going to call it what it is, a 428. So it has a dot, little M block. When I built my last 572, I ran the dot big M block, big block, tall deck. So this is a very nice block, hard to get at the moment, I understand. Since the whole whatever's going on in the world, it's hard to get a hold of stuff. So this engine was built in 2008. I have the paperwork and the dyno sheet. it made, before I get off into the specifics, it made 700 horsepower at 6,100 RPMs. That's lower than I would expect it, especially with a giant cylinder head. But that's what the numbers say. And it made over 600 foot-pounds of torque from 4,000 on up. So it's kind of a beast. It has a lot of compression. Depending on the CC of the heads, it's anywhere from 14.5 to 17 to 1. That's a lot. It was run, as I found out today, on the dyno with stack injectors and a magneto, but it was built for a front engine dragster. Used very little. It's traded hands 3 times now, only been run 2 passes. So goes the story anyway. And here it is. You know, if it's sitting here, one of 2 things or both have happened. There's something wrong with it, or it was a wicked deal, and or both. But let's get back to the parts. It has an RPM crankshaft. I had never heard of them, but I looked them up. It's a 4340 crank, good stuff. I believe made in America. I can't confirm or deny that. It has Scat Q rods, which are supposedly the best Scat rod. I was going to do some more research on that. I just went through all the part numbers that were provided on what little paperwork I have. Fluid damper, JE pistons, like I mentioned. Pretty much sums up the short block. The heads, Brodex, I believe they're dash 12, what they call them, but they're actually 15-degree heads. That references the valve angle. Stock small block Chevys 23-degree. Modern LS motors, I believe, are 15 as well. The more you change the valve angle, flatten it out. Somebody was smart enough to figure out it makes more power, also requires less timing. So this motor was run at 30 degrees of timing. It has, with this cylinder head, you cannot run conventional rocker arms. It has Crower shaft rockers, that's a requirement. With this head, you have to have offset lifters, longer push rods. Everything is unique to these heads. Once you go away from the 23-degree stuff, everything is, you know, kind of a package, even though you can source the parts from other places. It has good valves. The motor is just chock full of good stuff. It has now a single 4-barrel Dominator intake, Brodex. It came with this Mallory Comp SS. I got to do a little more research on that. I believe it's just distribution device. You still need a box to run it. I don't believe it's self-contained. I guarantee it's not self-contained just by looking at it, just by the wiring. So, even came with a chain. Can't go wrong, right? It has a Comp Cams roller cam and lifters. The nice Cloy's timing cover with adjustable thrust, because with a roller cam you need to control the thrust on the cam. I believe the rocker ratio is 1:6, so that would make the 670 lift, like 260 duration, 107 or 106 lobe centerline. So it's going to sound pretty nasty at idle, especially with all that compression, that's for sure. And camshafts like that, they're listed as circle track / drag racing because they share a lot of the same properties. Blower or nitrous, you probably would want more lobe separation, but it's what's in here, and we'll probably see, you know, how it works out. Now, you know, if I got it, like I said, I got a deal, and there wasn't supposed to be anything wrong with it, but it has an issue that I can't let it pass. When it was balanced, for whatever reason, you look up the crankshaft by part number, it should be internally balanced completely. When it was balanced, they drilled 30 half-inch holes in the flex plate to finish balancing it. That's a problem. So I've thought about what to do. I've had it for a couple days. That's a disappointing find. I mean, I saw it before I bought it, but it was such a deal. There's no way to pass it up. So I will take it all apart. It's a good idea anyway, because I want to see what's in there. I can clean up and paint everything. I shouldn't have to buy a whole lot of stuff. Oh, I forgot to mention, it has copper head gaskets with O-rings to help seal in all that compression. And, you know, take it apart, clean it up, make sure everything's cool, because it has at least 3 dyno pulls, a few runs in the front engine dragster, and here in Maine, a couple runs, I was told, in an Alted, which is just a shorter dragster. So, and it, performance-wise, they said the front engine dragster went 8 flat, and it was mostly a museum piece. Shouldn't have been going that fast. And the Alted, I think, went low 5s in the 8th, so that'd be equivalent to that probably. So I think it's an excellent find. I wasn't looking for it. It found me. I was intrigued and couldn't pass it up, and now I say it's a good starting point and just another project that we'll get to eventually. Now, what am I going to do with it? Well, the Race 55 Chevy that I'm sitting under, I want to be the Swiss Army knives of street/race cars. I already bought, when I bought the car last October, small block Chevy motor plate, big block Chevy motor plate, and LS motor plate, and I'll retrofit the car so all 3 of them fit. They all fit the mid plate. You just have to have different attachment methods or points for the front plate, and of course you got to fit it all in there with each different block, and of course different headers and everything else, because I want to be able to put any power plant I see fit in it. So, to be honest, 700 seems kind of low for what this motor should make. Most of the 427s or 428s that you see marketed with similar equipment make around 850. That, in this configuration with a little bit of nitrous maybe, might have enough power. I'm looking for, 1,000 horsepower. That would be on the low side. If I was to actually run it at the track, the car is capable of handling so much more. I'm hoping it's light enough that if it had 1,000 horsepower, it would still run respectably. But, and again, I'm going to street drive it too. That's why the turbo deal is a much better proposition. And if I had come across a decent big block, I don't know how we would. I've done the nitrous thing, and I was pretty okay with it. I never heard any parts with it. That's why I was okay with it and didn't have any problems to speak of. A big turbo on a big block, single turbo might be kind of cool. This has way too much compression for that. If it was, 12 to 1, I wouldn't worry about it. 16 to 17 to 1, I don't think that's going to work. So this would be an alcohol proposition. I got to research my race gas, but I don't really want to run alcohol or methanol, but due to the fact that it's just more maintenance from the fact that it absorbs water and everything that happens then, gets in the oil, gets in the fuel system, clogs it all up potentially. So I've never run anything on alcohol. Maybe we'll learn on this one. So it would look cool with the old stack injectors, but that would not be. Well, you never know. Maybe a bug catcher, a bird catcher. Again, you never know. So hey, if you see it in the background, that's what it is. Getting back to the balance issue, I thought about, and I haven't completely ruled out. If I'm running a manual transmission behind it with a manual transmission flywheel, perhaps I could duplicate the imbalance of the flex plate, because the rest, the balancer, is just an internal balance flex balancer. Whatever happened inside, the engine is what it is, but for whatever reason, they chose to also do the flex plate, and I wish they didn't. It would be nicer when you internally balance an engine. The external stuff should be interchangeable and you don't have to worry about it. But it is what it is. So that's it. Have a nice evening. Talk to you soon.